Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to This Explainer. Look, if you're gearing up for your real estate licensing exam, you already know the sheer volume of vocabulary can be, well, a little overwhelming, right? You're basically learning a totally new language. And one of those words that just constantly pops up and definitely trips people up is encumbrance. It sounds heavy, it sounds kind of complicated, and test writers absolutely love it. But hey, don't worry, today we're going to break the whole shebang down. We're stripping away all that complex legal jargon and swapping it out for a simple, practical understanding. So I want to kick things off with a super practical, real-world scenario. Imagine you're a newly licensed agent. Your client is absolutely pumped to sell their house, but then a title search reveals an encumbrance on the property. Instant panic, right? Will an encumbrance stop you from selling a house? Keep this high-stakes question in the back of your mind as we go through this, because really understanding the answer isn't just about passing a test. It's about confidently guiding your future clients through what can be a really stressful process.
Now, before we get to the answer, just a quick ground rule. This explainer is strictly for educational exam prep support. We don't guarantee specific exam questions, passing results, or licensing outcomes. Real estate terminology, licensing rules, and what's emphasized on the exam can and definitely do vary by state. So always make sure to double-check your specific state's official licensing requirements to get the exact details for your local area.
All right, Section 1. What exactly is an encumbrance?
Let's demystify this term and just look at what it actually does. Here is your classic textbook-style definition. An encumbrance is a claim, charge, liability, or restriction that affects real property. Okay, but what does that mean in plain English? It's simply something that can limit or affect who owns the property or how that property is used. Now, going back to our hook question from earlier, will it stop a sale? The answer is, well, not necessarily. An encumbrance doesn't always stop a sale dead in its tracks, but it absolutely can affect the title, the value, the use, or the transfer of the property. Basically, the buyer just needs to know about it and agree to take the property with that limitation, or the seller has to fix it before closing.
So the crucial point is this really simple equation right here. Encumbrance equals something that burdens the property. I want you to picture a giant heavy backpack sitting right on top of a house. The house can still be sold, you can still live in it, but it's carrying this invisible legal weight. That burden is the encumbrance. Honestly, if you can just lock the word burden in your brain, you'll be able to navigate almost any exam question they throw at you on this topic.
Moving right along to Section 2, Types of Encumbrances.
Now that we know an encumbrance is a burden, it really helps to split them up into two easy-to-digest buckets, and this brilliantly illustrates the difference. On one side, we have financial encumbrances. These are exactly what they sound like, burdens all about money. If you owe money and the property is used as collateral for that debt, boom, you've got a financial encumbrance, like a mortgage or a lien. On the flip side, we have non-financial encumbrances. These have literally nothing to do with owing money. Instead, they're physical or legal limitations on how you can actually use the property. We're talking things like easements, restrictions, or encroachments. So one bucket is all about money and the other bucket is all about usage. Let's run through some common examples you're super likely to see on test day. In the financial bucket, we've got liens and mortgages. Remember, a mortgage is just a voluntary financial claim against the property. Then, jumping to the non-financial bucket, we have easements, like, say, a utility company having the right to run pipes right under your backyard. We've got deed restrictions and HOA restrictions, which, might actually tell you what color you're allowed to paint your own front door. Then there are encroachments, like if a neighbor accidentally builds their fence a foot onto your land. Oh, and even leases. Yep, because a lease gives a tenant the right to possess the property, it temporarily limits the owner's use. That makes it a burden or an encumbrance on the owner's full bundle of rights.
Next up, Section 3, Avoiding a Common Mistake.
When you're sitting there taking a high-pressure exam, your brain just loves to take shortcuts. Because liens and mortgages are the most common burdens talked about in real estate transactions, people constantly make the mistake of thinking encumbrance only means a financial debt. And that's a huge myth. Remember our two buckets. A lien is just one type of encumbrance. Easements, use restrictions, and encroachments are equally valid encumbrances because they burden how the property is used. Seriously, do not let the exam trick you into thinking a property is totally free of encumbrances just because it's free of financial debt.
All right, Section 4, Practice Exam Question. Let's move to this and see how this builds on what we just learned.
Okay, active recall is definitely the best way to make these concepts stick. Imagine you're sitting right there in the exam room. The clock is ticking down. You look at your screen and see this question. Which of the following is an example of an encumbrance? Take a deep breath. Think back to your core definition. You are looking for something that represents a legal claim, a liability, or a restriction.
a true burden on the property.
All right, here are your 4 options. A sofa in the living room. B, a utility easement across the property. C, a welcome mat. D, a moving box. Take a quick mental pause here, weed out the distractors. Ask yourself which of these items is an actual limitation on ownership or use, rather than just, personal stuff sitting around the house.
Well, if you chose B, you are absolutely correct. A utility easement across the property is the winner here. Why? Because a sofa, a welcome mat, a moving box, those are simply personal property. They don't legally burden the real estate itself at all. But a utility easement, that gives a third party the right to use a piece of that land. It actually limits how the owner can use their own backyard. And since it affects the use of the property, it fits our definition of a burden perfectly. Ergo, an encumbrance.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a quick little exercise to really lock this in. Take a second right now and literally just look around your own home or apartment. What invisible burdens or encumbrances might be affecting your property right this very minute? Do you have a mortgage? Are there strict HOA rules telling you what you can or can't put on your balcony? Is there a giant utility line buried out front? When you connect this dry academic term to your real life, it's like a light bulb goes off. The concept becomes completely unforgettable. Keep using these simple memory tricks, keep breaking down the jargon, and I promise you'll be in great shape. Thanks so much for learning with us today, and hey, best of luck with your continued exam prep.